I got an email from a girl who said that she went to the Appalachian Mountains and there was a mimic there that was learning her and her friends' behaviors to mimic them and terrorize them. But this girl wanted to remain anonymous. She wanted me to call her Sam for the story, so I'm going to call her Sam. So Sam was staying in a small cabin deep in the Appalachian Mountains with her 2 friends. It was supposed to be a simple hiking trip. No phones, just forest, fog, quiet, them relaxing and hanging out. She said that during the day, the mountains were absolutely beautiful. She described these huge trees that were like disappearing into mist. You could walk for hours and not see another person, and they really liked that. But the weird part started the first night. It was around 11 p.m. when they were all just hanging out, chilling, talking to each other, when all of a sudden the forest just goes quiet, noticeably silent. She said that they couldn't hear crickets, wind, owls. It sounded almost like someone muted the world. She said that her friend Evan kind of looked at her and was like, why did everything just stop? And she is like, I don't know. You're right. It's pretty unnatural. They were pretty freaked out by this. It was that quiet. So they're sitting there talking about how weird this is and how weird they feel when suddenly they hear this noise. Just a pop. Like a single rock hitting a tree, or like someone hit a tree with a stick. At the time, they just kind of nervously laughed it off. They're thinking maybe it was just a branch that fell off a tree, or maybe it was an animal. But then they hear it again, just pop, pop. She said that these noises were spaced out, almost like something was responding to something else. But at this point, they decide that they're just going to ignore it and go to bed because they're pretty freaked out and they don't really want to think about it. She said the second night is when things got worse. Around 2 a.m., they woke up in the middle of the night because they were hearing something outside, and this sounded almost like footsteps crunching on leaves. She describes it as like a crunch, pause. Crunch, pause. Now, at first they just think that maybe this is a deer or something until it gets to the porch. She said that she could tell that something was on the porch because the boards were creaking differently and it did not sound like an animal. As soon as she heard those creaks, her heart immediately just starts racing because whatever was outside on that porch was walking back and forth, just outside pacing on the porch. It was very slowly, almost as if whatever it was thinking, like walking back and forth just to think. So she decides that she's going to sit up in bed, and she's just kind of listening for a couple of minutes. And then she realizes something. The footsteps are getting closer and closer to her window. Then complete silence. Then she starts to hear breathing right on the other side of the glass. Heavy, slow breathing. She said that she was way too terrified to look. She was not looking outside. She sat there for a minute, and this was happening for a bit until eventually it just walked away, and then she fell asleep somehow. So by the third morning, they're a little freaked out, and at this point, they're too freaked out to not say anything. So they decide that they're going to talk to the owner of the cabin. So they asked the owner of the cabin, listen, is there any animals around at night? Maybe that would be like kind of stalking the house? And he just kind of shrugged, like very nonchalantly, just shrugged and said, I don't know. Yeah, sometimes. But she said that the way that he said it made her feel very weird, like he knew something that he didn't want to explain. Well, that night they decide that they're going to stay up later by the fire outside. Big mistake. So they're outside hanging around the fire, they're talking, they're having a good time, when suddenly everything just goes silent again. Dead silent. The woods, no owls, no crickets, no nothing. They can't hear anything. It's like the whole world was muted again. The only thing that they could hear at this point was the fire just crackling. Then they hear something, and it's coming from deep within the trees. It's a human whistle. 3 short notes. So her friend Evan immediately stands up and is like, did you hear that? Did you hear that? But before Sam could even answer him, the exact same whistle came from the opposite side of the cabin. It was not deep in the forest anymore. It was much closer too. They're looking at each other like, what is going on right now? What is going on when they hear it again? Except for this time it's coming from behind them. At this point, they realize something very unsettling. Whatever is making these noises, there's more than one of them. She said that after this, they went inside pretty damn quickly. Thankfully, nothing else happens that night, but the 4th night was the worst night, and it's why she will never go back. So the 4th night, they all go out, they have a good time, the day is fine again, right? They go to sleep later on that night. Sam wakes up in the middle of the night. It's 3 o'clock in the morning because she needs water. The cabin was pitch black, and both of her friends were asleep. As she walks past the window, she notices something outside. There's a shape standing near the tree line. Now, at first, she just thinks that this is some shadow, right? Then it moved. It stepped forward into the moonlight, and she swears that it looked just like a person. But something about the way it moved was not right, and something about the way it looked was wrong. Its arms hung low, too low, like below its knees, and its head kept tilting, almost like it was trying to understand something. She said at this point, she just froze, and then it did something that made her stomach drop. it spoke. And Evan's voice, but very distorted, like it couldn't find the right pitch. It said, "Hey, come here for a second." So she slowly turns around, and Evan is still on the couch asleep behind her. Her friend's still sleeping upstairs. And then the voice comes again. It says, "Come outside." Same tone, same accent, but not Evan. So she slowly starts backing away from the window, and she's just trying not to make any noise. And then the voice spoke again, except for this time it sounded like her. It said, "Hello?" She said that hearing her own voice coming from outside, knowing that it was not her, obviously, was incredibly disturbing. At that point, she runs into the bedroom upstairs to wake up her friend, and she runs back downstairs to wake Evan up. And they all get up. They go downstairs together. They do not sleep for the rest of the night at all. None of them looked outside again. So the next morning, they all get up and they're like, "F this, we're leaving. We cannot be here anymore." So they pack up and they're going to leave early when Evan goes and walks around the cabin, and he is like, "Hey guys, come here for a second." In the dirt beside the porch were footprints, but they were not normal human footprints. They were huge. They looked human, but like stretched out. Like someone had taken a normal footprint and just stretched it out longer. The weirdest part, they stopped right under the window where she saw that thing standing. Even scarier, there was no footprints walking away. There was only the footprints leading towards the cabin. She said that she's told the story a few times, and most people think it's either an animal or someone was messing with them. So when they were leaving, the cabin owner walks up to them and he asks them, how was your stay? And they tell him about the footsteps and about the whistling and about everything that had happened. She said that he then went quiet and said something that she will never forget. He said, "Next time you hear something calling from the woods out here," and he looked straight at her, he said, "Don't say anything you don't want repeated." And that's when she realized something. That thing outside the cabin, it wasn't just making noises, it was learning their voices. And they had stayed in those woods for 4 nights, listening, talking, laughing, giving it plenty of time to practice in her mind. She said that she's heard a lot about mimics, but never really in the Appalachian Mountains, which I have heard several stories about mimics in the Appalachian Mountains. And nothing spooky has happened since then, but she will never forget about this night. So what did you guys think about that story? That is terrifying. Multiple mimics? Do you think there were multiple, or do you think that was one that was able to make its voice travel? So many questions I have about this one, but I have like 0 time because I really want to do the shout outs, and it actually looks like I'm not going to be able to. Damn it. I'm so sorry, you guys. I'm not going to be able to. But yeah, tell me what your thoughts, opinions, and suggestions are on this story. Has anyone ever experienced multiple mimics before? I would love to hear if you have, or your thoughts on that. Again, your opinions, thoughts, suggestions down in the comments. But as always, please be respectful. My name is Kaisa. I tell your paranormal experiences on here every single night. So if you're into that, hit that follow button. And I just need you to do 3 things for me. And what are those? Keep sending me your scary stories. Have a safe night. What's the third one? Say it with me. Have a spooky night. Love you so much. See you in the next one.
I just read a comment that said, "Have you ever read or seen a story that has scared you so much you don't want to make a video about it? Or if I made a video and I just never posted it?" Yes. So I'm going to talk about it because I saw it today. So basically this woman was talking about how her son has night terrors and very often comes and sleeps in her room. Middle of the night, child is calling for her from the hallway. The door to her room is like cracked open just enough so she can hear him, but she can't see him because the hallway is dark. Calling out to her, saying he had a bad dream, blah 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 blah, like saying he's scared. She's responding to him and is like, "Hey, like come and sleep with mom, blah 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 blah." He always comes and sleeps in her room, so it's a little unusual that he wanted to like go back and sleep in his room. But as she's talking to her son through the door, she is like, "Why don't you just come in here?" And kept insisting on him coming and sleeping in her bed. The little boy, who's like 5 or 6, is like, "No, I want to go sleep in my room." Son is extremely insistent on sleeping in his own bed and is like, "Please come and help me. Like, I want to go and sleep in my room." She's thinking that maybe he is just outgrowing sleeping with mom in mom's bed. And mind you, he is just getting angrier and more insistent that she comes out to the hallway to come and tuck him in. The moment she caves, she puts her hand down and touches her son, who is sleeping next to her in bed. And the moment she does so, she does not hear anything else in the hallway. So whatever it was trying to lure her out into the hallway in the dark by herself. And that just gives me so much anxiety thinking about that. And that freaks me out so bad because if you've been here a long time, then you know, I had a very scary mimic experience about 3 years ago. And I very often think about it because I get mimic emails all the time. And every single one of them is terrifying, just as terrifying as this story. But that's gonna do it for me. Stay tuned for more ghost stories.
Let's read some more scary Reddit stories. One time, I could ignore it, but 2 is a pattern, and now I'm so freaked out. The first time was in December 2025. My husband went outside to smoke, and I was gathering a few items and about to head out there with him. Then I have a weird feeling, so I look up and I see my husband's face outside. I thought it was weird he moved the chair to sit in front of the door, and he had a smile on his face. At first, I thought he was smiling at our dog. Then I realized how creepy the smile was, and his stare felt crazy. I think to myself, is he okay? And I go out there. To my shock, he wasn't in front of the door where I had just saw him, but on the left side, sitting down on his phone. The second incident happened yesterday. We had just gotten home from our grocery trip. I was focused on getting out of the truck and walked over and saw my husband leaning into the truck getting the groceries. He was rummaging quite a bit and it went on a little too long, so I asked if he needs help and there was no answer. Hayden? No answer. I turned towards the truck and to my shock, no one was there. I straight up saw the shadow figure of him. And right when it had disappeared, my husband came around the corner from our house where he had just placed some of our groceries inside. I am so freaked out. The only thing I find solace in is the fact it was outside both times. I believe it can't enter our home. I hope it's just a bored spirit messing with us, but this is going to send me over the edge. Around 15 years ago, when both of my kids were toddlers, I was putting them to bed one night, and my son was adamant that he wears his favorite red race car pajamas. I happily obliged, helping him change into them, and tucked him into bed. Then I sat down at my kitchen table with a friend who had came over to chat and catch up. The way that my apartment was set up, you could see my kid's bedroom doorway from the kitchen table. My friend and I were talking for a while, but we were suddenly interrupted by the sound of my son screaming. We both turned and looked at the bedroom doorway and saw my son standing there loudly crying and shrieking and wearing his green pajamas with airplanes on them. Everything inside of me was screaming that this was wrong. The hair on the back of my neck stood on end and a cold shiver shot down my spine. My friend and I wordlessly stared at each other for a second. We both knew that my son couldn't change his pajamas by himself yet. We looked back at the doorway and my son was gone. We ran to the bedroom and found him tucked in bed, still sleeping peacefully in his red race car pajamas. My friend asked me if I saw him standing there in his green airplane pajamas, and I confirmed that I had. My friend freaked out and left. I slept on my kids' bedroom floor that night to make sure nothing happened to them. My friend and I still talk about it to this day. It's one of the craziest things that's ever happened to me. My son, of course, doesn't remember any of it, but he loves hearing the story of how his doppelganger scared the crap out of us. Let's read another scary Reddit story. Me and my daughter Olivia live in a small town in South Dakota. She goes with her father every weekend. She leaves every Friday afternoon and comes back Sunday evenings, so usually she'll be gone by the time I get home from work on Friday evenings. This particular Friday, when I pulled up to our driveway, I looked up at her window and noticed her bedroom light was still on. I figured she accidentally left it on before leaving. I walk into the house and hear movement coming from upstairs. Oh, she's still home, I whispered to myself. I went upstairs and knocked on her bedroom door and slowly opened it. Your dad isn't picking you up this weekend? I asked. No, I told him I want to stay, she said while looking down at her journal. Great, I'll make dinner for us, and we can watch a movie if you'd like. There was a long pause before she said yes. I closed her door and I thought she was acting a bit standoffish. She usually has a lot to say. I texted her dad asking if maybe they had gotten into some sort of disagreement or argument that led her to not wanting to go with him this weekend. I went downstairs and started making dinner for us. As the food was cooking, I started organizing things around the house and I noticed Olivia's book bag and coat aren't hung where we usually hang our things when we get home. I thought maybe she just took her things up to her room. No biggie. I went into the living room and saw Olivia sitting on the couch facing away from me. I didn't even hear her coming down the stairs. She kind of startled me, especially because she's just sitting there, not on her phone like usual, and the TV's off. I walk over to the kitchen and check on the food. I yell out if she can please pick a movie out for us. I went out to check what movie she picked, and to my surprise, the TV is still off and she's still sitting there motionless. "Olivia, you didn't hear me," I said. I grabbed the remote and picked out a movie. I chose The Conjuring. I grabbed our plates, and as I sat down on the couch, I heard a notification coming from my phone in the kitchen. I told her I'll be right back. I checked my phone, and it was a text from her father. After reading his message, my body went cold and stiff, literal chills. He said, "What do you mean? I picked Olivia up from school and we're grabbing dinner with her grandma right now." I feel catatonic at this point. I took a deep breath and walked slowly towards the living room, peeking in to see if it was still sitting on the couch. It was. It was just sitting there very still, looking forward but away from me. I haven't even seen Olivia's face since I've been home, like the thing has purposely been avoiding eye contact. I went back into the kitchen. I didn't know what to do. I'm fucking terrified. I had to go back out there. My car keys are in the living room. I took a deep breath and got the courage to walk out confidently like everything was normal. It was gone. I don't know why I yelled out, "Olivia," my stupid, confused human instincts. I heard its voice coming from upstairs, sounding just like my Olivia. It said, "Mom, I'm upstairs. I need your help," in the most sinister voice. Hell no. I grabbed my keys and ran the fuck out of the house. I was shaking so much I couldn't even put the damn keys in the ignition. God, I wish I had to push start for this very moment. As I reversed out of my driveway, I looked up at the house, and it was at Olivia's bedroom window waving at me, faceless. I couldn't even breathe. I never drove off so fast in my life. Did this really happen? Because if it did, I would be moving countries. Let's read another scary story that was sent to us. I grew up always being able to visit my grandparents. We live in the same city, and I'd see them almost every other week. They've had the same house for years. The house was built in 1995, and I've never felt uncomfortable until my parents and I moved in with them for a few months. I was 11 at the time. The first week we moved in is when I saw it for the first time. I was in the kitchen, standing right outside of their pantry. I turned my head and saw a black short figure walk across my grandparents' room. My family was in the living room. I was curious, so I walked to their room, and it was pitch black. I remember it being light, so I really can't think of how it got so dark in their room. A few months later, on a Friday, I remember it was Friday because that's when I'd clean out my backpack. I was staying at my grandparents'. My mom and I had finally moved out, but my dad stayed for a while. It was around 11 p.m. and the house was pitch black. I was sitting on the staircase, iPad in hand, and my backpack right next to me. And in the darkness, I could hear the heavy footsteps. I looked up and I saw a dark figure walking past the stairs and into my grandparents' room. That's kind of when I knew it was time for bed. I didn't see it as often after that, only once, when I saw it peeking over the second floor railing, but that's it. Until last week and today. My dad moved to another town, but when he came to visit, we stayed at my grandparents' house. My dad always begged me to sleep in the middle bedroom, the creepiest one. Twin beds, a crib with creepy old stuffed animals in it, and has always given me a really bad vibe. Of course, I said no, so in the morning, I woke up. My dad and my grandma went downstairs at the same time. I saw them. About 30 minutes later, I was just lying in bed, not ready to get up, when I saw my grandma walk past my room. She was downstairs. She never goes upstairs unless it's time to go to bed, so there was no reason for her to come back up. I freaked out and ran downstairs. I've always felt nervous leaving the room I'd sleep in at their house. I always felt like there was someone right behind me. I don't know if it's just my imagination, but I will always believe there is something in that house. I'm not frightened by it, but today I saw it at my mom's house. I knew it was the same figure, and I think it followed me. I was in the kitchen today, and in my pantry it was standing there. I only saw it for a split second, but I knew what it was. And my cats had been acting weird before that, staring at my mom's door frame way too often. The more I think about it, the more freaked out I get. That story was sent by Poppy. That is such a cute name. But that is really scary. And the fact that they are seeing it in their mom's house now. But I will say, it hasn't done anything bad, so hopefully it stays that way. Maybe it's a nice spirit just looking after Poppy. What do you think? Let's read another scary Reddit story. My name is Michael, and I'm a 14-year-old boy who lives with my aunt in the countryside. Now, out here, we have no neighbors. The closest place to my house is about 8 miles away. I always loved living out here because I've always liked the seclusion, and the road we live by is always dead at night, which makes for good sleep. Now, my aunt is always working the night shift, so this means I would be home alone pretty much every night. Long story short, I came home from school on a relatively crappy day, thunderstorms and rain all day and all night, and spent my day playing video games and Snapchatting my friends. At about 9 o'clock, my aunt came upstairs and told me she was heading off to her job. I was always fine with this because I liked being home alone. I had full range of the house and could play loud music all I wanted. Who wouldn't love it? At about 11 o'clock, I had started feeling tired and laid down to watch some YouTube and go to sleep. And soon enough, I did. I woke up at some odd hour of the night to somebody knocking on the door. I sat up and muttered, "What the hell?" I thought my aunt had got home from the night shift and reluctantly went to go answer the door, and out of habit, I checked the window beside the door to make sure it was her, but there was nobody there. I thought to myself, probably some stupid kids knocking on my door and running away, and I dismissed it at that and went back to my room. I checked my phone to realize it was 3 a.m., and the thought of teenagers ding-dong ditching my home was suddenly out of the question given that it was a Wednesday and I basically lived in the middle of nowhere. Just as I was thinking, I heard a bang coming from the basement. I jumped and tried to make up an excuse, like a noise of the thunderstorm, to calm me down. We always kept our basement door locked anyway, out of my aunt's paranoia and fear of someone breaking in. That's when I heard footsteps slowly creaking up the old wooden stairs in my basement. Frozen with fear, I grabbed my phone and called 911. The operator told me to go to an upstairs room in the house and grab a weapon to defend myself. But there was no way I was going to grab a knife from the kitchen, especially when I heard the door being slammed and quickly realized that someone was trying to bust it down. I jumped from my bed and closed my door quietly and hid in my closet like the 911 operator had told me to do. This was easily the scariest moment of my life, but suddenly, the banging stopped. But what comes next will haunt me for my whole life. Whoever it was screamed at the top of their lungs, but it wasn't a normal scream. It was an insane and disgruntled scream. And then I heard the basement door collapse. Now he was full out screaming as he sprinted up the stairs. He went through all the rooms down the upstairs hallway, still screaming, until he reached mine. My door, unfortunately, didn't have a lock on it, and when I heard him open my door, I was paralyzed with fear. I could see him through the shades of my closet. He was still screaming, looking all over my room, even under my bed. But then after trying to hold my breath for too long, I let out a puff of air. He perked up, looked straight at my closet, and slowly started walking towards it, no longer screaming. I couldn't even breathe at the moment, especially when he just stopped right in front of the closet door. I could see him through the closet, and he had the biggest smile I had ever seen. As soon as he slowly reached for the closet doorknob, there was a loud bang at the door and somebody yelling, "Police!" The man quickly ran and tried to run out my window but failed. As soon as I saw the police tackle him, I instantly ran out of the closet and outside. After a couple of minutes, I saw the police bring the man out in cuffs, but on the way to the car, he stared at me with the biggest smile and the craziest eyes I had ever seen. Watching him ride away with the police was the greatest moment of my life. But what still haunts me today is the face he made as he was standing in front of my closet door, ready to do something horrible. Okay, if you've been following me for a while, you know that is my worst fear. Like a home invasion, especially while being home alone. And the fact that this guy was running around screaming, that reminds me of like a zombie or something. That is terrifying. Let's read some creepy Reddit stories about Randonautica. Not mine, but my boyfriend told me this a few nights ago. He and a few friends used the app when they were in their teens, 16 to 17. It took them down a dirt road in the middle of nowhere in the woods in Texas for a few miles to a barn. There, on the barn's balcony, stood a naked man holding a hook. This man then proceeded to jump down and chases them till they are about half a mile from their car. On the way back to the car, they passed through a smaller shack containing hooks, and one of the group grabbed two. They still have these hooks to this day, because other than that, they thought they had all hallucinated. Apparently, this was in Texas near an area where the Hookman murders happened in the 50s. To this day, my boyfriend wonders if he met a serial killer or just some random psycho, and they wonder what would have happened if they had entered that barn. I remember a few years ago, I went randonauting with my then boyfriend. I can't remember what I put in for the second thing, but the first thing was fortune, and we were led to a super nice neighborhood. I had no idea it even existed. It was so far out of the way, and it felt surreal. We kept driving around, and finally, after getting bored, I think I set it to anomaly or something, and it led us to the driveway of a house nearby. It looked normal, but there were electricity wires hovering at the end of the driveway just above us, right at the point's coordinates. It was normal for most houses in the area we'd lived in, but there was red string tied in a knot on the lowest wire, almost like it was waiting for us. We didn't get out of the car, but it felt weird the whole way back, and we thought we were being followed, so we turned into a gas station. It's so weird because we never could find that rich neighborhood again. Maybe it's just fault of memory, but the whole time something felt off. Went on randonauting with the intent of money. Pin brought near a convenience store with 2 ATM machines inside. So I thought, yeah, right, that's got money in it, but I have to withdraw. But what I saw in front of the convenience store where the actual pin is was unsettling. A man with a paper bag standing on the actual spot, looking at me as I was standing in front of the convenience store. Next to him was a truck with 2 other guys on the phone. As I looked away walking, they were all looking at me, with one of them pointing at me as if they want to run after me. I ran fast and never looked back. A few years back, my friend and I decided to randonaut later at night. We set our intention to something exciting, and it brought us to the train tracks in our neighborhood. As we pulled up, there was an oncoming train and a man who immediately drove his car around the barriers and head on into the train. We freaked out, obviously, and called the police to report it. I think he ended up seriously injured, but lived, fortunately. My best friend and I randonauted like 4 years ago and found this creepy abandoned gas station biking distance from my house at 2 a.m. It still had signs up for 65-cent gas and everything. The building was gone, just gas pumps standing on an empty piece of concrete in the middle of a busy part of town. Kinda cool, kinda creepy. The actual creepy part came when we went looking for that gas station again a couple days later and could not find it anywhere, or even anywhere it could have been. It just disappeared. I used to live in a place with huge organized crime problems. So one day I was testing the app with a friend, and I told him to try it and think of some intention. The location given was in the middle of nowhere, a couple of miles outside the city. I asked him what he thought of, and he said, dead bodies. I told him I wasn't going there at all, so we found other cool places. Fast forward a few months, I moved away, but kept following that city's local news agencies on social media, mainly because it's a hassle to unfollow each one. One day, I read on my feed that a group of volunteers dedicated to look for people kidnapped by criminals had found a few bodies in the exact same location that had been given to us by Randonautica. I sent the article to my friend, and he couldn't believe it either. It was very creepy. Okay, I've never used Randonautica before, but after reading these stories, I kind of want to. I want to see if I see anything scary. Let me know if you've ever used Randonautica and if anything creepy or weird happened to you. Let's read another scary Reddit story. Okay guys, so I grew up in a house built in 1860 in upstate New York with 0 problems. We bought this fixer-upper house here in Virginia right before COVID. It was built in the 80s. And let me tell you, I love scary stories, but have never encountered so many creepy things as I have in this house. First of all, 2 years ago, I was nursing my son at about 2 a.m. in our bed. My boyfriend always seemed to wake up with me and the baby during his infant days and would just keep us company on his phone while our son ate. We were both very awake this night, just chatting a little, and the dogs were sleeping in the living room. Suddenly, we hear the dog's feet on the wood floors and excited panting. Mind you, these are dogs who usually bark if someone enters the house who doesn't live there. Then we both hear a man's voice mumbling in our kitchen, as if he is greeting our dogs. My boyfriend looks at me shocked and then springs up to check as I am petrified. He sees nothing in the entire house. The next occurrence happens a few months later. I am alone in our large bedroom, just putting things away and tidying up before getting into bed. As I turn off the light switch, my boyfriend walks into the room, so he passed right by me. I didn't look straight at him, but I greeted him while turning down the covers. No answer. Still sidetracked with plugging in my phone and such, I ask him if he is going to bed, as he was over on his side of the bed, just standing. No answer. I still wasn't looking at him. He likes to joke around with me, so I straight up asked, "Are you mad at me or fucking with me right now?" As I finally look up, he ducks down by his side of the bed, and I seriously just thought he was picking up some shit our son had thrown down there or something. I asked the same question again, and then my actual live boyfriend walks into the room and goes, "Who are you talking to?" I had chills over every inch of my body, and he just shook his head like, "You're nuts, girl." Since then, there's been a few smaller things that have happened. My son's toy went off in the living room once with nobody around it. And one morning my boyfriend came home from night shift and our laundry basket was in the middle of the kitchen. He thought I had moved it there before bed, but I assured him I had no reason to. The reason I'm writing this now is I was just cooking in the kitchen and heard whistling behind me. And earlier today, I heard a human adult cough upstairs. I am freaked out, especially with my boyfriend working nights. Any feedback? This is one of the stories that's going to be on my next podcast episode, which comes out on Sunday. So make sure you're following my podcast so you can listen to the rest of the stories, because this is a good episode. Let's read another creepy Reddit story. I grew up in Missouri, the kind of place where nothing ever really happens. Moberly was just another dot on the map. Brick buildings, railroad tracks, cornfields stretching out until the sky swallowed them. I'd lived there for my whole life, gone to the same high school my parents did, driven the same back road since I was 14. That's probably why it took me so long to realize something was wrong. It started during my junior year, late fall, when the sun went down too early and the air smelled like dead leaves and cold metal. I walked home most days instead of taking the bus. It cut through a shortcut behind an old abandoned building near the tracks. Everyone called it the feed mill, even though it hadn't been used in decades. One afternoon, I heard footsteps behind me. I slowed down. They slowed down too. I told myself it was just someone messing around. Kids from school like to scare each other back there. But the steps didn't sound right. They were uneven. Like whoever was walking didn't know how long their stride was supposed to be. Sometimes I'd hear dragging, sometimes a sharp tap, like bone on concrete. I turned around. No one was there. The air felt thicker, like before a storm, and the silence pressed in on my ears. I hurried home, heart racing, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something had been watching me from just out of sight. After that, it happened more often. I'd catch movement in windows that reflected the street behind me, something tall and pale that vanished the second I looked directly at it. Teachers would call my name in the hallway, but when I answered, they'd swear they hadn't said anything. Once, I heard my mom call me from downstairs while she was still at work. That's when I started losing sleep. The night I really saw it was after a football game. I was cutting through the same shortcut, hoodie pulled tight against the cold. The moon was bright enough that I could see the feed mill clearly, its broken windows like dark, empty eyes. Something stood beside it. It was shaped like a person, but wrong in every detail. Too tall, too thin. Its arms hung almost to its knees, and its head tilted at an angle that made my neck hurt just looking at it. Its skin looked stretched tight and pale, like it had never seen the sun, but somehow knew what a human was supposed to look like. I couldn't move. It shifted its weight, joints clicking softly, and when it stepped forward, I realized it had been trying to stand like a person and failing. Each step was a correction, then it opened its mouth. Hey. My voice. Exactly my voice. I felt sick. My hand shook so badly I dropped my phone. The thing tilted its head further, studying me, and its face pulled into something that might have been a smile. Its eyes reflected the moonlight, wide and empty, like it didn't understand fear, only imitation. I ran. I didn't stop until I reached my front door, fumbling with my keys, sobbing harder than I ever had. I didn't tell anyone. What was I supposed to say? that something was copying me, that it lived by the tracks. But sometimes when I walk home now, I hear footsteps behind me that match mine perfectly. And every once in a while, when I pass the feed mill, I see fresh footprints in the dust. They're human. Almost. Let's read another scary Reddit story. I was 18 years old, female, when this happened. At the time, I was living at home with my parents, who had recently moved far out into the countryside. Their farm was part of a tiny rural cluster, about 7 farms on one road. That night, I was home alone with our dog, a large Labrador I was looking after until my parents came back the next day. It was around 11 p.m. I was laying on the upstairs couch with a movie playing quietly on the TV, half asleep and relaxed in the stillness of the house. Then, 3 loud knocks shattered the silence. They came from the front door downstairs, the door directly at the bottom of the staircase leading up to where I was. The sound was sharp and deliberate, not hesitant, not accidental. My dog sprang out of his bed beside me and started barking immediately. I tried to calm him, but he was beyond listening. He bolted down the stairs and positioned himself in front of the door, barking and growling into the darkness. Outside, the courtyard was completely black. I stood halfway down the staircase, my pulse hammering in my ears, and called out, "Hello?" No reply, just silence. I called again, louder this time. Still nothing. The quiet that followed felt wrong, thick and watchful. After a moment that felt much longer than it was, I forced myself to move. I stepped down the rest of the stairs, my dog still tense at the door. Carefully, I opened it just enough to lean my head outside. There was nothing there. No lights, no movement, no footsteps fading away, only the dark courtyard in the cold night air. It felt like whoever or whatever had knocked had simply vanished. I shut the door quickly and locked every entrance in the house. My hands were shaking as I called my parents. They immediately contacted our neighbors, a couple who lived nearby. Within minutes, they arrived. I explained what had happened, still trying to steady my voice. They decided to walk around the barns and check the property. Those 10 minutes felt endless. When they returned, they said they hadn't found anything. Still, they strongly suggested I come sleep in their guest room for the night. I told them it was probably just me overreacting if nothing had been found, but they kept insisting, more seriously than I expected, that it would be safer to come with them. I refused. I couldn't leave my dog. Before leaving, they told me to call immediately if anything else happened, no matter how small. When my parents returned the next day, they installed surveillance cameras outside the front door. They said it was to make me feel safer, especially since I was often home alone with the dog. A few months later, my parents were celebrating their 25th wedding anniversary. During the evening, I found myself talking with my female neighbor and thanked her again for coming over that night. Her expression shifted. She went quiet for a moment, like she was weighing whether to say what was on her mind. Then, she told me she had to be honest with me. That night, shortly before my parents called her, she had been outside saying goodnight to her horses. The yard was completely still. No wind, no distant cars, nothing. That's when she heard it. Footsteps. Clear, deliberate footsteps crunching through the gravel in our courtyard. Not random, not hurried. Slow, controlled. Like someone walking with purpose in the dark. She said the sound carried unnaturally well in the silence. Then the footsteps stopped. Right there in the yard. She waited to hear them continue, to hear someone speak, a door, anything. But there was only a heavy, suffocating silence, and just moments later, my parents called her about the knocking. She told me she never heard those footsteps leave. And that is one of the stories that's going to be on my new podcast episode that comes out tomorrow, so make sure you're following me on Spotify. And while you're at it, go ahead and follow me on YouTube too, why not? Let's read another scary Reddit story. Let me start this off by saying that it is imperative that you stay off the dark web. No matter what anyone tells you, no good can come from using it, and I am about to tell you why. I was 15 at the time. I had come home from school on a Friday afternoon ready to relax, kick back, and enjoy the short break. I had started using code about a year prior and was practicing it daily. Now, I had known about the dark web before this took place. This particular day, however, I decided to venture further and really take a look at the dark web. I'm sure a lot of people are familiar with the iceberg diagram representing the internet's content. I heard stories about what goes on the deep web, but I didn't really believe that they were all legit, so I hopped on tour and began to see what I could dig up. I started off by going on the hidden wiki and browsing through various websites, most of which contained illegal things. I clicked on a random forum link which took about a minute to load. I wish I could remember the name of it. It was a forum where people could pick a topic they wanted to talk about, such as politics, dealing with mental health, etc. There was one particular one that caught my eye. The link was in all red while the rest were all black, and it said, "Not for the weak, enter at your own risk." Curious as to what it was, I click on the link and it brought me to a forum that had only one link on the whole page. I clicked on this link and it brought me to a chat room. I realized that nobody was saying anything in it, only sending links. This set off alarm bells in my head because I had an idea of what was on these links. I wish I had listened to my gut feeling, which was telling me to close out while you still can. However, the ignorant, curious teen took over me, and I started setting up some protection for myself using the codes I had learned. I later realized this amateur coding I did would not protect me from these advanced people with malicious intent. I clicked on a random link and a page loaded surprisingly fast. It looked to be another chat room. I went to type hello or something, but it wouldn't let me. I sighed and began moving my mouse to go to the previous page when a noise went off. I had received a chat. The message said, "Hello new user, I see you have found my site. Would you like to continue?" I tried typing again, but I still couldn't. The next message sent chills down my back, and my hands are shaking just recalling it. It read, "No son, not the keyboard." I tried turning off my computer, but of course nothing worked. Another message popped up saying, "I guess I'll take that as a no." The screen suddenly changed and a video began playing. It was a black screen, but I could hear a deep male voice say, "Unfortunately for you, you do not have a choice." I grabbed a sticky note and put it over my webcam, and the voice on the screen said, "Ah, so we're playing games now." The video then began to change, and I realized the man was taking his hand off the camera. He was a short man, but that brought me no comfort. He held up a knife and said, "Name any body part." I then for the first time noticed a cloth in the corner of the room covering something up, which I could only assume to be a body. I had had enough. I unplugged my computer and laid on the floor panting for hours until I could finally get up. I now suffer from anxiety and won't touch a computer unless I have to. Just be safe out there, guys. Okay, so let's not go on the dark web. And that is one of the stories from my next podcast episode that comes out on Sunday. So be sure you're following me on Spotify so you don't miss the episode.
I got an email from somebody who said that they had a mimic in their house that was mimicking their dead grandmother. This is one of the scariest mimic stories I've ever heard. We're gonna call this person Bailey. So Bailey lives in Romania, and she lives at the edge of a pretty big city. She's lived there all her life. Now, a little while ago, her grandmother was sick. Her grandmother was passing away, unfortunately. So her grandmother had to go to the hospital. She's in the hospital, and the doctors are finally like, "Listen, go home, rest until the rest of your time here." So she was basically going home to pass away in a peaceful manner. So Bailey lived 8 hours away from the hospital, but her grandmother wanted to spend the rest of her time with her family, with Bailey's family. And so Bailey's dad went to go get her and drove her back the 8 hours back to their house. So they get back to the house, and when she gets to the house, she specifically asked to sleep in Bailey's room. Now, it's important to note that Bailey's room is the only room with a cross and a Bible in it. Bailey is obviously okay with this, right? Her grandmother is sick. She wants her to be comfortable. So Bailey goes to sleep on the couch downstairs. So she goes downstairs. She falls asleep on the couch, and she falls asleep fairly quickly, and she's sleeping like a baby when suddenly she just wakes up out of nowhere, and she has this very weird feeling like something is watching her. Now, just so you can kind of get a picture of this, they have windows on 3 walls that are connected. The couch that she was sleeping on was next to the 4th wall that did not have a window. But wherever she looks, she was looking out the window. On the right wall is a side table with a clock and a TV. And when she looks directly in front of her, there are 2 walls with windows. Now, she's sleeping on her right side. So the first thing that she sees when she opens her eyes is she sees the clock, and she sees that it's 2 a.m. But then she sees something kind of at the corner of her eye, and she kind of veers her eyes over to the left, and she sees something that does not belong in the room. What she sees horrifies her. It is this extremely tall figure, completely black figure. It is so tall that it has to kneel down to look at her, which is what it is doing. It is kneeling down like this, looking at her. If it wasn't kneeling down, it would have gone through the ceiling. That's how tall it was. As it's kneeling down, it's just looking at her like this, and it's just waving at her. like this. So then it starts doing this. It starts pointing to one area of the wall. And then you know how someone lifts their hands up like this with both of their hands and they go like, I don't know. So it would point to one area of the wall and then it would lift its hands up like that and go, I don't know. And then it would turn its head and then it would look over and point to another area of the wall and then it would go. So it was messing with her. Kind of like, what's there? I don't know. What's there? I don't know. She said at this point, she is in shock, but this terrified her. So immediately, as soon as she could move from the shock that she was in, she just lifted up the blanket and put it over her head. She's under the blanket for a little bit when she finally like peeks over the blanket and this thing is just gone. The next day, she wakes up and she's terrified and she tells her grandmother about her experience. And her grandmother tells her that this was an angel. Her grandmother, later on that day, passes away. This was not an angel. So fast forward to a few years later and the pandemic hits. And in Romania, she said that they have this tradition where after like a few years after someone passes away, they go to their grave. It sounds like they kind of celebrate the person and they offer everyone like a burial cake. When she goes to this thing, the whole thing is kind of reminding her of what happened that night. And that night absolutely terrified her and she wanted to forget about it. She didn't want to think about it. So they go through this celebration or this ceremony that they do and she goes home. So she gets home and she goes upstairs and she goes to her room and her family leaves. They go somewhere. So she's home alone in her house now. She's just hanging out in her room when suddenly she hears something that literally made her want to vomit. From downstairs, she hears, "Come eat, I made soup," in her grandmother's voice. She is sitting in her room like, there's no way I just heard that. So she has balls because she gets up and she goes and opens her door and she kind of walks out into the hallway a little bit. And then she hears her again say the same thing about the damn soup. She said she's like yelling. She's not asking. She's like demanding that she come eat this soup. So at this point, she is like, F this. So she goes back in her room and she shuts the door and she waits for her family to get home. And she tries to forget about this because she did not know what to do about this. I mean, she was already traumatized about what had happened the prior years and now this. So she thinks she's going insane at this point. She said in the email that she really thought she was losing her mind. A couple weeks pass and she's trying to forget about this incident again. And she is in her room just hanging out when suddenly she hears bang, bang, bang on her door. Then she hears, Bailey, open the door, in her grandmother's voice. And bang, bang, bang. And then the same thing again. Her, whatever this thing is, demanding she opens the door. So she doesn't know what to do at this point because she genuinely believes that she's hallucinating and that she's not really hearing these things. And so the banging eventually does stop and she's just sitting in her room in complete shock. But she didn't really say what happened exactly after this. She kind of jumped forward to that summer when she was talking to a friend. Now, she hadn't really told anybody about this because, again, she did think that she was going crazy. So she tells her friend about it. And she's like, I think I'm losing my mind. This is what's happening to me. I am terrified. I don't understand what's going on. And her friend is like, you're not losing your mind. Her friend then proceeds to tell her that a couple years prior on New Year's Eve, when her friend was over at her house, her friend was sleeping on her couch, and that her friend woke up and saw a tall, dark figure that was so tall it was crouching, and that it was doing that same thing that it was doing with her. But Bailey says that from time to time she still hears footsteps in her house and she hears her grandmother whistling. She said that she would like to think, and that she hopes that this is true, that this thing can't get in or do anything to her unless she lets it in or lets it do anything to her, and that it specifically cannot get into her room because her room is the only one with a Bible and a cross. So what did you guys think about that story? I've heard a lot of mimic stories, and correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think I've told any, and I don't think I've heard any that have to do with a mimic mimicking someone who has already passed on. That is so scary to me. I can't picture like hearing in my grandmother's voice, because both of my grandmothers have passed on, that anything. Just hearing that, especially "come eat, I made you soup." You like, that's taunting. It's like the thing that was kneeling down next to her was taunting her. Whatever this is taunting her. I don't think that was an angel. Do you guys think that was an angel? I do not think that was an angel. Do you guys think this was the same thing? Do you think the tall thing was the same thing mimicking? Because who knows? I mean, mimics are supposed to look like the person, right? Just not have their face. At least that's what I have learned from doing this and doing a little research. I could be wrong. Again, correct me if I'm wrong. But the fact that it was mimicking someone who had already passed on, a loved one that had already passed on, is so creepy to me. And I need to be careful about saying that like these stories don't scare me and that I'm desensitized to them, because the last time that I said that on a video, I had the worst sleep paralysis experience that I've had in a long time. And it was, you know, after you have an experience like a bad dream or a sleep paralysis and you wake up and like you can still feel it in the air, like it just feels bad and weird, and you feel like you're still in it, but you're awake. Has anyone else felt that? That's how it felt, and I hate that feeling. I'm running out of time, so any thoughts, opinions, suggestions that you have, please drop them below. I'm sure I'll think of something that I wanted to say after I end the video. I always do that, but please be respectful as always. And with that being said, I'm not going to do my favorite part, which is the shout outs. Kane Graphics, you left such a nice comment. You said that you like the sound effects that I make, and that I was one of your favorite spooky storytellers, and that is one of my favorite things to hear. Thank you so much for saying that. That was so nice. Thank you for commenting and pushing my video out, and thank you for being a part of my community. You have no idea what it means to me to have you here. I'm so glad that you are here, and I just really appreciated that. It made my night. It really did. So thank you so much. I love you. JerseyGirl_2526. I have literally had to replay this 3 times. Thank you so much for the comment that you left. You said that you love the way I tell scary stories, and I love that. Thank you so much for saying that also. I really appreciate that. Thank you for commenting and pushing my videos out. I'm sorry that I haven't responded to your guys' comments for the past 2 days. You know that I will get to them, or for the past 2 videos. I always do. I know it is so important to me that you guys feel as appreciated as you make me feel. So you made me feel very appreciated when you left that comment. Thank you for being a part of my community. I hope you know how much I truly do appreciate you as an individual. I love you, girl. Individual. Love to get through one video without stumbling over my words. But anyways, my name is Kaisa, and I tell your paranormal experiences on here every single night, or ones that you recommend to me. So if you're into that, hit that follow button, and I just need you to do 3 things for me. And what are those? Keep sending me your scary stories, have a safe night, and what's the third one? Say it with me. Have a spooky night. Love you guys so much, my spooky babies. I'll see you in the next one. Spooky kiss.
I hope you guys like a good ghost story, because I have about 1,000,001 of them. The things I really wanted to do with this account was make a series where I tell all the ghost stories about the haunted house I grew up in. So this is going to be part 1, which is the story of the mimic of my mom. A little backstory. The way that I view entities or spirits in the law of assumption is like, if you assume that something is real, you're going to experience it. If you assume it's not real, you're not going to experience it. That's how I kind of view it, I guess, looking back. And that being said, I grew up in a so ghosts are real household, to the point where we would go ghost hunting with my mom's whole family. We would use like EVP recorders. We'd watch ghost hunters every week. We were like into it, guys, like going on ghost tours with the Queen Mary, like the whole 9 yards. Being said, I very clearly experienced a lot of ghost activity growing up. I apologize in advance if I get some of the terminology wrong. I'm not 100% like super fluent in like the terminology of the different entities. There was basically a mimic of my mom in our house, and at my mom's house it was me, my sister, and just my mom, because my parents were divorced. This mimic was so normal for us to have around, like we would just casually mention it. A lot of times if my sister and I were just at home alone and my mom was gone or something, we would like hear our mom calling us, or we would see her walk by really fast, and we would just kind of like be like, oh wait, did she get back? And we'd look at to see if her car was there, and if her car wasn't there, we'd be like, oh yeah, it's a mimic of mom again. Like that's how normal it was. The thing I'll say about this mimic was like, it looked like my mom, but like a little bit different. For example, like when it walked by, it would like move a little bit faster, a little bit like weirder than a human would. Or the one time I saw its face, or the few times I saw its face, her eyes were like really wide, like that. Oh, I have chills. Oh my god. Also, like her smile was really wide, and she looked like my mom, but like creepier. The thing I will say is like, we're not crazy, okay? So I didn't always try to just be like, oh, it's a ghost. Like anytime I heard like any little sound, like I really did try to explain it away. So like if I saw her walk by really fast, I'd be like, oh, that was my hair, like out of the corner of my eye or something like that. Or, oh, I was just hearing things, she wasn't really calling me, like stuff like that. These were the 2 times that I want to tell you about that we really couldn't explain away. The first time was the creepiest one. Oh my gosh. I'm going to try my best to explain how this is set up so it makes sense. Basically, my mom in her bathroom and her master bedroom, she has her master bedroom right here, let's say, and then she has an archway and then a hallway right here, and it leads to her master bathroom. In her master bathroom, she had this whole wall of like, the whole thing was a mirror basically. She had a vanity that would face this mirror. So that meant if you were sitting at the vanity facing the mirror, then if you looked in the mirror, you could see the whole hallway behind you and into her master bedroom. Okay, so I'm sitting at the vanity as a teenager, doing my makeup, looking at her little vanity mirror, like a different magnified one she had on the vanity. And out of the corner of my eye in the mirror that was like in front of me, like the whole wall of the mirror, I see her like peek out like this slowly, oh my gosh, from behind the arch and smile. And I was like, Mom, stop. Here's the thing though. Mom was like a fun person. So I thought she was just pranking me or something, or like playing a joke on me. So I was like, Mom, stop. Like she just kept staying like this. And I didn't really like look at her fully. I was kind of like, Mom, oh my God, stop. So I look up in the mirror and it was my mom, but like creepy. Like her eyes looked a little weird. Like I said, wider, her smile looked wider. Like, and I like jumped and I turned around really fast to like look down the hallway and she's not there. I run, go find her. She's like, what are you talking about? I asked her about it basically, like, are you staring at me or were you just looking at me? And she's like, what are you talking about? Like I've been downstairs the whole time. I was like, oh, well, I just saw that like weird mimic ghost thing. And she's like, what? And the other time my sister and I still talk about to this day. We were sitting at the living room watching a show, and like by the living room there's like this little hallway that led to a bathroom, and you could see it if you were sitting on the couch in the living room. My sister and I are watching a show together, and we see, both of us see our mom walk by, go down the hallway, turn on the light in the bathroom. The light literally turned on, closed the door, and that was it. So after our show ended, we kind of noticed, we're like, wait, she's been in there for a long time. Is she still in there? We should go check on her, right? So we go walk over, we knock on the door, we call our mom's name, she didn't answer, and we're like, are you okay? And we open the door, and there's no one in there. The light is on, the door is closed, no one's in there. And again, we try to be logical. I was like, oh yeah, whatever, like, you know, she probably walked by, we didn't see her. Go around and look for her. We're like, mom, and she was completely in a separate room, like not even in there at all. We're like, did you go in this bathroom? She's like, what are you talking about? I've been in this room for like an hour. I think she like left the house at one point and like came back or something. I can't remember, because this was like, I mean, 20 years ago, maybe not 20, like 15 years ago. We're just being a long time ago, but yeah, she wasn't there. And there was no way that could have been her. So it was really weird. That is the story about how we would see a mimic of my mom all around our house. This is part one. Like I said, if you guys like this, I would love to tell more stories about the ghosts in our house, because we had so many, and this is just my mom's. We have so many ghost stories about other places we went, or about my dad's house. And so if you're interested, I would definitely make more parts of this, but this was something I was really excited to share with you guys. I hope you liked it.
What if an entity was living in your home, trying to learn how to mimic your voice, and you had no idea what its intentions were? That's what happened to this person in today's story. Welcome back to Creepy Crochet and Creepypasta. Let's get into it. I didn't believe in things like mimics before last winter. I thought those stories online were just people trying to scare each other. Now I keep my bedroom door locked. It started on a Tuesday night. My parents were downstairs watching TV, and my little sister had already gone to bed. I was in my room playing a game with my headset on when I heard my mom call my name from the hallway. Alex, can you come here a second? Her voice sounded normal, a little tired, like it usually did after work. I paused my game and opened the door. The hallway was empty. I leaned over the railing and looked down into the living room. The TV was on, and both my parents were sitting on the couch. Did you call me? I asked. My mom looked up, confused. No. I figured I must have imagined it through my headset. That happens sometimes. So I went back to my room and shut the door. About 10 minutes later, I heard it again. Alex. Alex. This time the voice came from right outside my door. I froze. It sounded exactly like my mom. Same tone, same way she stretched the A in my name. But something felt wrong. I can't explain it well. It was like when someone sends you a voice message with bad audio. Technically the same voice, but slightly off. I walked to my door and put my hand on the handle. Yeah? I said. Silence. Then, very softly, open the door. It was still my mom's voice, but my mom never whispers like that. I opened the door quickly. The hallway was empty again. This time I checked downstairs immediately. My parents were still on the couch. Are you sure you didn't come upstairs? I asked. My dad laughed. Why would we do that? I didn't tell them about the whisper. I didn't want to sound paranoid. The next night it happened again, but it wasn't my mom. It was my sister. I was brushing my teeth in the bathroom when I heard her from the hallway. Alex, are you awake? She sounded sleepy. I stepped out. Yeah? What's up? No one was there. I walked to her room and pushed the door open. She was asleep. Completely asleep. Her nightlight was on and she hadn't moved. That was the first night I felt actually scared, because when I walked back into the hallway, I heard something behind me. A quiet shuffle, like someone stepping backward around the corner. I ran back to my room and shut the door. After that, I started noticing other things. Voices when no one was nearby, footsteps stopping the second I opened a door. Once, I heard my dad call from the basement. Alex, come help me. But when I got halfway down the stairs, the basement light was off, and my dad walked in through the front door behind me. Why are you standing there? He asked. I didn't answer. That night I started locking my door. Things were quiet for a few days after that. I almost convinced myself I imagined everything. Then Friday night happened. It was around 2:30 a.m. I woke up randomly and checked my phone. The house was completely quiet. Then I heard my own voice from the hallway. Mom? It sounded exactly like me. Same pitch, same way I say the word. I sat up slowly in bed. Then it said it again. Mom? The voice was closer to my door now. My heart was beating so loud I could hear it in my ears, and then I heard my bedroom doorknob move. Just slightly, like someone was testing it. The lock clicked softly but held. There was a pause. Then my voice whispered through the door. Why is it locked? I didn't answer. I couldn't move. A few seconds passed. Then the whisper changed. Not into another voice, into something that sounded like someone trying to remember how voices work. My mom's voice. Alex? My sister's voice. Open the door. My dad's voice. Everything's okay. Then my own voice again, right against the door. Let me in. I didn't sleep at all that night. Eventually the footsteps moved away. In the morning I opened the door. The hallway looked completely normal, but on the wall next to my door there were faint fingerprints, too long and too thin, like someone had been leaning there for a while, listening. The weirdest part is what happened yesterday. My mom asked me a question at dinner. Alex, Why were you calling me from the hallway at 3 in the morning? I felt cold instantly. I didn't, I said. She frowned. You did. I heard you say, Mom? Twice. My dad nodded slowly. I heard it too. I didn't tell them what I heard outside my door because I'm starting to realize something. Whatever is in our house is still practicing. And sometimes at night, from somewhere in the hallway, I hear it quietly repeating my name, trying to get the sound right.
Okay, as promised, I'm back with more ghost stories, and I'm gonna tell what I think is like one of the most terrifying things that has happened to us to date in this apartment. Okay, so if you're just joining us, a little backstory. I live in a 200-year-old New Orleans apartment. It's in the French Quarter. It is like a very traditional, cool New Orleans house. It's beautiful, it's moody. If you wanna see what it looks like, there's lots of videos. But, you know, as expected, there have been quite a few unexplained things that happened in here. So a little bit of backstory. We have a ghost that's like pretty judgmental, so anytime we change anything, she seems to make some noise. We had painted the walls blue, which we just painted the ceilings today, so we'll see how that goes. And there was an incident in the middle of the night that really scared the two of us, my boyfriend and I. And it was, we woke up in the middle of the night, 3 a.m., and all of the windows in the living room were open. So this was very strange. We didn't leave them open. It was unsettling. It was the first big, like, really unsettling thing that happened. And after this, we had the house cleansed. So that was all good, right? And for a couple of weeks, everything was quiet. I had a friend who came to stay, and she ended up sleeping in the back bedroom, which, if you know anything about the back bedroom, if you've seen the videos of it, I will even insert one right here. It's got a super heavy, dark, very creepy vibe to it. I cannot explain it. I do not like to go back there by myself. It just has a weird feeling, and I think a lot of people, even in the comments, had said that they could feel it through the video. It's just really strange back there. I'm sorry for all of the fidgeting, by the way. I have crippling ADHD. So she comes, she stays in the back. Everything's fine, right? We didn't tell her that there was like spooky stuff going on here because I didn't want to freak her out. She's kind of a very practical person too. And you know, on the last day that she was here, we were talking and she was like, hey, that room has a weird feeling. Like, I don't know what it is. She's like, it's really comfortable, but it just has like a very odd feeling. And I said, I know. And I said, did you see anything? And she said, no, I didn't see anything, but like it just has like a weird heavy feeling to it. Oh, she also said she felt like somebody was watching her. And she said, like, couldn't really explain the feeling, but she just felt like somebody was always watching her. And that's a feeling that in the back of the house, oof, I get that all the time. And so does my boyfriend. So this was kind of a little bit of validation, right? So the night after my friend leaves, we go to bed, everything's normal. My boyfriend, my dog, and I were sleeping. And in the middle of the night, once again, so my boyfriend wakes up, and I had not woken up yet, or I had not like woken up yet. I was still sleeping on this side, and I was awoken by some like shuffling on his side of the bed and just like a little bit of frantic behavior. So this is weird. I turn around, he looks at me and he jumps back and he goes, I just woke up and you were coming from the middle, like where the closet is, and I'm actually going to insert a video there right now because it's a really creepy closet and we always keep the doors closed. Okay, here's this side of the bed, and then these are the French doors that go to the Jack and Jill closet. And please excuse the mess in there. This walks through, and then there's more French doors in the back, and that connects to that back bedroom. So always at night, we keep these doors closed. So he said that he saw me coming from the like French doors, which were closed, and coming from the French doors, and I was standing right in front of him while he was scrambling to put his glasses on, and it startled him, right? And then he turns around, and I'm like just waking up because of the commotion that's being made. So we get out of bed, we go into the kitchen, we turn the lights on. We're a little bit startled. The dog's with us. She's acting a little bit weird too, but it wasn't like she wasn't barking or anything like that. And then we decide to go back into the bedroom to go back to bed. and the French doors to that center, like Jack and Jill closet, were open. These were not open before. Like, I am 100% positive they were not open. It scared the shit out of us. And he said, as clear as day, I was walking and I stood right in front of the bed and I was staring at him. So, I don't know. That's another mimic situation, right? It's really, really odd. You can chalk it up to, oh, maybe he was tired and he saw me standing in front of the bed when he put his glasses on. But why were the French doors open? So let me know what you think. I've got more coming for you. I just thought that one was really, really creepy.
Oh my gosh, guys, this one actually made me almost nauseous thinking about how scared I would be in this situation. You might have heard this one before, but I had to share it when I found it. So this woman writes that she is a firm believer that if you acknowledge something, it gets stronger. She said she wants to sort of just put the story out into the world in hopes that it takes the temptation away for her to bring it up to her fiance all the time. Okay. So one evening after work, she comes home and goes to take a shower. She mentions that she hadn't slept well the night before and she was very tired. She had her music playing as loud as it would go so she could hear it over the rushing water. But about midway through, her music began to lower down and then it was silent. Okay, I have goosebumps already just thinking about this. So she turns around to open the curtain to see what's going on with her phone, just to find in that moment her fiance slowly pulling back the curtain, sticking his face through and smiling at her. So she's looking at him in confusion, and then he pops his head back out, turns around, leaves the bathroom, flicks the light off, and shuts the bathroom door. She's really pissed, and she's like, I just really don't like certain types of pranks, and call me lame if you want. I really don't want to have to deal with getting out into the wet, slippery darkness of the bathroom and deal with it. So she immediately steps out of the shower, flicks the light back on because it was between the shower and the bathroom door. And now she storms out of the bathroom without even getting a towel, on a hot pursuit to find her fiance. So she finds her fiance sitting at his computer with his headset on, and she absolutely lays into him. But now he has a really confused expression on his face. He's actually pretty scared and startled, and he has no idea why she's coming at him like this, and she just keeps on going about how he better never do that again. So he asks her, explain what I did to you wrong? And then that just pisses her off even more. But then he said he had been playing since before she even went into the shower. And for some reason in that moment, she believed him. She mentioned they'd been together 6 years, and she's very much aware he never pulls pranks of any kind, and he doesn't like them himself. But since she was so tired, she didn't really let any of that sink in before she just lost it on him at first. She does mention now that she thinks of it, it would have been physically impossible for him to get all the way over there and get back to his computer without her having heard him. She says there's 2 different metal baby gates that you gotta go through from the bathroom to the office and a bunch of things in between. Like, she would have known if he would have run from the bathroom towards the office. She says this is absolutely the creepiest thing that has ever happened to her, and she would like to write it off as just sleep deprivation. But that music was turned off, the light switch was off, and that bathroom door had opened and closed. They always shower with the bathroom door open because there's poor ventilation for steam. So the fact that it had been closed, she made him check the whole apartment for an intruder, even though she says that was his face peeking in and smiling at her. No, thank you. She makes him stay in the bathroom with her while she rinses the conditioner out of her hair. And she does say that things have happened around the place before, like some of their objects are rearranged or put in different places. There were often strange sounds that they couldn't rationalize, and their motion sensor cameras triggering with nothing being there. Unfortunately, she thinks about this every time she showers now. She has no idea what it could have been, but is always open to hearing what other people think. Anyways, as always, let me know your thoughts in the comments, and if you're new here, you gotta follow for more creepy story time.
What would happen if you followed a mimic? Now, I've always wondered this, because you hear these stories of someone hearing their mother knocking at the door or telling them to come in the kitchen. But what would happen if you actually listened to the mimic? Here's a story that might tell you why you should not follow a mimic. There was this young man named Aiden. Now, Aiden lived with his grandfather and his 2 parents. Now, one day, Aiden was hanging out in his bedroom, and he's playing a game. Well, he hears his parents like pull in, and he looks out the window and sees them getting out of the car, unloading some groceries into the house. So he's like, awesome, man, we're gonna have something to eat. So he goes back to his game, and then he hears his mother say, Aiden, come in the kitchen, I got some food. And he, at this time was like in the middle of a battle. So he's like, hold on, Mom, I'll be there shortly, I'm in the middle of a battle. And she goes, come on, Aiden, hurry up, come in the kitchen. And all of a sudden, he said he got a phone call, and it was from his mom. And he's like, why is she calling me when she's in the kitchen? So he picks it up, and his mom's like, hey, honey, we're at the grocery store. Do you want us to get you anything? And he goes, what do you mean you're at the grocery store? You already got groceries. You're in the kitchen. And she goes, what are you talking about? We just got to the grocery store. And he looks out the window and sees that their car is not there. And then right at this moment, he hears his mom saying, you better get in the kitchen right now or you're going to be in trouble. You better come eat. And he's like, I got to call you back, Mom. He hangs up. So he goes and he locks his door, and then he calls his mom right back and is like, look, when you get home, call me. I'll help you bring in the groceries. So about 25, 30 minutes later, his mom calls him, and she's like, honey, we're home. Come outside. And he said he was getting ready to go out of his room, but he looked out his window first, and their car wasn't there. So he's like, you know what? I don't know what to do because I don't know who really is my mom right now. So as he's sitting in his bedroom, right, he hears his parents come home and come into the house, and all of a sudden his mom comes up to his door and starts knocking. And she goes, Aiden, let me in. And he's like, not right now, Mom. And she goes, what are you talking about? Let me in. Unlock this door. Why do you have the door locked? And he's like, no, I'm not opening the door. And his mom goes, all right, I'll just get the key and unlock it. So he grabs this baseball bat that's chilling in his room, and he's prepared for this thing to come in. And at the time, he still thinks whatever, was calling his name in the kitchen, this is them. So he sees the handle jiggle and the door open, and it's really his mom. And he can tell that it is actually his real mom. And she goes, what are you doing? And he's like, oh, nothing. And he sets the bat down, and she's like, you're acting weird and stuff. And there's food in the fridge if you're hungry. So he didn't know what to make of that. What did he just experience? And he didn't feel like he could tell his parents about it. So he decided to talk to his grandpa, who was kind of like his best friend at the time. So he goes to his grandpa's room, and he's like, Grandpa, he's like, have you ever seen something you can't explain? And he goes, what do you mean? And he tells the story about how he thought his mom and dad had came home, he's seen their car and everything, but it wasn't actually them. And the grandpa goes, oh no. And he goes, what's wrong, Grandpa? And he says, well, when I was a young boy, I grew up in a small Polish village near Warsaw. And he said, we had this term that was this long Polish word, but it roughly translated into evil twin. And he said they believed there were these evil spirits that could take the form of anyone and would try and trick you and lure you, out into the woods. So his grandpa said, when I was a young boy, my father had me chopping wood outside. And I hear my grandma's voice coming from the forest. And she's saying, come in the woods. I baked you a pie. Come out here. It's nice and warm. You'll like this pie. And he said, he was so hungry, he almost started to go out into the woods until his father ran and grabbed him and said, get back in the house. And his father locked the door and said, if you hear someone calling you from the woods, don't ever go. Don't respond. So he said, when you encounter an evil twin, as they called it, they will follow you for the rest of your life. And he feared that maybe this thing had followed him here to America. And this is what Aiden had seen. A couple weeks later, his parents are gone, and it's just him and his grandpa, and they're watching this World War II documentary in the living room. Well, all of a sudden, the wind picked up, and a strong breeze pushes the back kitchen door open, and they hear it, open up. So his grandpa's like, I'll go and close the door real quick, and I better lock it so it doesn't blow open again. So his grandpa goes into the kitchen, but after about 10, 15 minutes, he doesn't come back. So Aiden's like, Grandpa, are you all right? He goes into the kitchen, the back door's still open, and he doesn't see his grandpa. He goes throughout the house, he's yelling his name, he doesn't see him anywhere. So he goes out, to the back door, and he's yelling his grandpa's name, he doesn't hear it. So he calls up his parents, and his parents come home immediately, and they call the police, and they do this big search throughout the neighborhood and into the woods. And they end up finding his grandfather in the middle of the woods, he is completely naked. He is confused and like doesn't know who he is, doesn't know anything, doesn't remember anything. So they bring him back home and everything. Well, Aiden said that, you know, they chalked this up to dementia and said he was diagnosed with like a severe case of dementia. But Aiden, in his mind, suspected, because of the series of events that happened before this and his grandfather going out to the kitchen when the door opened, that this was the evil twin thing that his grandfather had talked about. And he said, although his grandfather had completely lost his memory, from time to time, he would say to Aiden, "Is my brother outside? Is my brother out there?" And he couldn't figure out why, like, his grandfather would keep saying that. And then he realized maybe this thing appeared as his brother and it lured him like into the woods.
Turns out a lot of people have experiences with mimics, and if you're familiar with them, if you're curious about them, or more specifically, if you know what they are and what they want from you, this story is for you. Maybe you can help shed some light on what's going on here. But this story came from a woman named Cheryl, and Cheryl said that when she was little growing up, she shared a room with her mom. And this one night they go to bed, and Cheryl was excited. She couldn't sleep because her cat had just had kittens. So naturally, she's this little girl. She wants to get out of bed and play with the kittens, but her mom was like, no, just go to bed. Like, we'll play with them tomorrow. So she waits for her mom to fall asleep. She gets out of the bed. She goes over to the basket where the cat and the kittens are. And she said she was wearing this like yellow and white striped pajama set. She remembers because she remembers going over to the basket, picking up a kitten and trying to put it in the pocket of her pajama set. And that's when she heard her name. So someone said Cheryl, and it sounded like her mother. So she spins around. She thinks she's going to get in trouble for playing with the kittens. And she sees her mother sitting on the ledge of the bay window in the bedroom. So her mom's like, Cheryl, come here. And she said it was weird because her mom was just sitting there in the dark and she was tapping an empty bottle of Pepsi against the windowsill. And she just kept repeating the same thing, which was, Cheryl, come here, come here. And she kept motioning for her to come closer. And this was like her mom loved Pepsi, but it was just like eerie because her mom was just in bed. And something inside of her was like, this isn't right, because she knew that her mom would say more than just, Cheryl, come here, come here. So she snaps her head to look back at the bed, and her mom is sleeping peacefully in the bed. She said panic hit her like a wave. She put the kitten back down in the basket and ran back to the bed, crawled in next to her mom and curled up next to her, which woke her mom up. Cheryl said she was too afraid to like look over back at the windowsill for the woman who was trying to get her to come closer. And her mom was like, what's wrong? What's wrong? And she's like, you're over there on the windowsill. Her mom was insistent that she was just having a bad dream. And she was like, I'm not over there. I've been in bed this whole time. Like, you just had a bad dream. Just go back to sleep. But she said she knows for sure what she saw. And there was someone or something pretending to be her mother. And she never really understood what happened until she became an adult and heard other stories of mimics. And she feels like that's what it was. But she said she's had other experiences as an adult. After she's had her own kids, she's heard them calling her name when they haven't even been home. And she said these experiences just kind of happened at random. Like, there didn't seem to be any rhyme or reason to the times that she's experienced it. She said she's kind of made peace with it. Like, I mean, what's there to do, right, if you're having these experiences? But then she also said that she's sharing this because it still gives her chills to this day, and she really is just looking for more of an explanation of like what's going on. So I'm curious to know if you know anything about mimics. What's going on? Help Cheryl out here. I worked a ton this weekend. It was CMA Fest in Nashville, so I'm a little bit behind on stories, but I'm trying to rapid fire a bunch this week. If there's a certain subject you want me to cover on a future Spooky Scary Story Time, just let me know, and I will be posting a bunch this week.
You guys want to hear a scary story? One time when I was babysitting, and the house I babysat at was extremely haunted and had a lot of things happening all the time, I experienced a mimic for the first time. I think it was a mimic. Let me explain. So basically I was watching the girls. There's two girls. Oldest one we call her Luna. Youngest one we call her Aura. And it was during the day where I came over here. I remember it was on a Saturday. So parents were both working. And I remember I got over there around 11 o'clock in the morning. And the dad was supposed to be, mom went to work at like 11. Dad was supposed to be home from work around 3. So just quick shift, easy day. And then I was gonna go out with my friends after. I was in high school. I remember this day so specifically. So I'm there, everything is going fine, right? And the girls are acting normal. I haven't heard any talk of their usual imaginary friends in the home, anything like that. We're having a good day. I'm like, great, vibes are high, day is good. So I'm in the kitchen and I'm making them a snack. It's around summertime. I want to say it was May or April. So it gets pretty hot because I was in Peoria at the time, in Arizona. And anyways, we were playing outside in their little slip and slide. They had like a little thing. It was like one of those blow up inflatable ones you plug the hose into. And we were playing outside. I went inside to get them a snack and some waters because I was always just making sure they were fed and hydrated in the summer. I go inside and I remember I was grabbing out those little tiny water bottles, you know, like the ones for kids. Grabbed a couple of those out of the fridge, and then I went to get some cheese sticks. And when I shut the door, I heard, Riley, and it sounded just like their mom. And so I was like, oh shit, like she's here. Why is she here? And I remember I like didn't know if I was hearing things at first, and I was like, I gotta think of a name for her. We'll call her Jen. I was like, Jen? And it was completely silent. And my phone was sitting on the counter because I took my phone inside with me to get the snacks and stuff. So I look over at my phone and I don't have a single text from her or a missed call. I'm like, huh, this is so weird. And then I hear again, Riley, and it's definitely her voice, but it's coming from the back. So the kids' rooms where a lot of activity would happen in that back hallway, in those back rooms. I'm like, I instantly get chills. My whole demeanor changes, the vibe changes. It was one of the most confusing things I'd ever experienced because I never been through anything quite like this, with the voice being identical to their mother. And so I sat there for a minute. I wasn't sure what to do because part of me knew it wasn't her, but other part of me was like, how could it not be her? It's literally her voice. So I sent her a text and I just said, hey, I hope work's going good. I'm outside with the kids. They're like, I'll send you a picture of the slip and slide, whatever. Because I wanted to see if she would instantly reply and be like, oh, I came home early or something. Nothing. So I go outside and I brought the water and the snacks and I forget my phone inside. So I drop everything outside, run back in to grab my phone. She already responded. This happened within a minute of me sending the text. She responded. She said, oh, you're so sweet. Like, work is really busy today, but I'm glad they're having fun. Send me a picture. So she's not home. It's not her. And right when I read that text, I hear again, Riley, but it's much more faint, but it is still the exact voice of Jen. That was one of the experiences that wasn't the scariest one, but that has stuck with me because it's such a surreal feeling trying to explain how terrifying that was. When Jen's voice too was so distinct, and I knew I wasn't crazy, but I felt crazy because what the fuck was that? Something like this happened one other time, but this was the first time it happened, and to me it was just so scary because it was during the day and I thought everything was fine. And I always think about what would have happened if I would have went back into those rooms and not texted her. And I mean, she wasn't there. It wasn't her. So I always wonder what would have happened if I would have just blindly followed that voice. That's all for now. Bye.